Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cultural Awareness, the podcast that allows you to travel across the world. All of this from the backseat of your car, the comfort of your home, or maybe your neighbor house. Who knows? Wherever you are, welcome. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'm your host, Big Steph. Welcome. You are here. Yeah, you are here. You are listening to Cultural Awareness Podcast. Yeah. Okay, so let's stop fooling around. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this new podcast episode, right? I know it's been a while, but we're here now. We made it. Nah, I'm just kidding. We're still working hard at it. So thank you again for tuning in and checking out this new episode. So, have you ever heard of the term when African meet people? Actually, most Bantu African traditionalist people, when they meet a man, they ask him, did you grow up in a kitchen or did you grow up in a living room? From that alone, depending on his answer, a man can kind of figure out how this person makes decision in life. Right? So in Africa, they will often ask you, did you grow up in a kitchen or in a living room? Most people wouldn't understand what that term is. So that is why we are here, right? That's why this is called cultural awareness, man, because we bring you up to culture and tells you what goes on around the world. So first, let's start with the kitchen. What do you think of when you think of kitchen? Most people will probably think of good food, I don't know, chicken or I don't know what you think when you think of kitchen, but most people probably think food. Well, in Africa, most of the time when we say kitchen, we mostly are talking about the mother, the person that is actually making the food, right? Because women are like the governor of that area, right? Men don't step into that area. That is not their job, or not job, but that is not like their area of focus when you think about like a traditional African family, especially most of Africa from what I've seen on my research, but in Bantu for sure, men don't really step foot in a kitchen because it's like a sacred place, it's considered to be a woman temple where she, she's at ease and she cook the way she wants, she dress the way she wants, she does everything the way she wants, as it please her, like she doesn't have to ask anybody permission for nothing. So like she's the governor of that area. Nobody step in that area without her permission. Well, let's bring it back now to our subject of the day. What does it mean to grow up in a kitchen? A man that grew up in a kitchen means that he mostly grew up next to his mother, because usually the living room back home, besides eating together as a family, is usually like a man temple. You can call it like a man office, right? Where you greet your guests, where the men watch TV, listen to radio, and like maybe zip a little bit over some type of whiskey and making comment with friends and family members. So like the man is supposed to be the one in control of that area. So if you grew up in a kitchen, that means you wasn't living in in the living room with your father. You were mostly attached to your mother. Like that's why some women used to saying that, oh, he's a mother's boy or something like that, that expression. You probably heard of a mother's boy, like meaning he does everything his mother says because he's so attached to her. Yeah, well, those type of people are the people we say in Africa that they grew up in a kitchen. Why? Because they literally execute every single thing in life that their mother taught them. Right? So, most people might say that's a good thing, but in Africa it's actually considered a bad thing if you cannot make decisions for yourself, if everything you do is based on what your mother taught you. And that brings us to this quote, right? They say that a boy would listen and practice 100% advice he received from his mother is doomed to fail. A boy who listens and practices 100% of his mother's advice is doomed to fail. Why do they say that? Because they believe that women have more of a nurturing side into them. Women take more precautions, and they calculate a lot more the risk versus men. And men, when you ever seen where they say who's gonna jump in the pool first, you always have that man that always well, shoot, I don't care, they would just go ahead and do it, right? That's because it make most men I believe in, based on the culture, to make decisions faster. And the only way for you to learn how to make those type of decisions on the spot right away, if you grow up with your father, or meaning if you grow up in a living room versus growing up in a kitchen. In the kitchen, you learn more advice about nurturing, taking precautions. Like you will see, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but in Africa, it's considered that you cannot really do anything for yourself because you rely and depend on everything your mother says. You don't want to be called a mama's boy, right? You want to be your own man. You want to be independent. For that reason, you have to learn how to be attached more to your father, because men are the one facing the most risk in life, right? So I ain't never seen any time when a thief come in the house and he have maybe a shotgun or something like that, and you wake up your wife to go look at the door. No, you are the man of the house. That is why you get up and you go take one for the family, right? You take one for the team. That is pretty much what it is. So, you have to learn how to make those decisions. Could you imagine a thief coming home with guns and everything, and you have to send your wife to go look what is going on? That is not a true man, right? Same thing. Why? Because you probably thought that, there's some of these thing of equality thing, but anyway, I don't want to get into that. My goal is to mostly teach you, or not to teach you, but to kind of explain to you why we say that some men grew up in a kitchen versus some men grew up in a living room. So most men that grew up in a living room tend to be more attached to their father, and most men that grew up in a kitchen tend to be more attached to their mothers. And every time you are mostly attached to your mother, you don't know the consequences of life. There's nobody in the kitchen to teach you how tough life really is, right? You have to be with your father to see this daily struggle of a man. Because whether you like it or not, women most of the time go in marriage, right? But a man, think of it this way. When a woman is looking to marry a man, right, she usually says one of these two things. She usually says, I want a man that will fight for me, that will give me a sense of security, and I want a man that have a good job and that will provide for the family. You always hear that, provide for the family. That is really, really correct. A man should be able to provide for his family. But what if he didn't learn how to provide? Because he most of the time spent time listening to his mom in the kitchen versus being with his father in the living room and really learning how to provide for a family. Providing for a family comes most of the time from the father, right? Because the father knows how tough it is out there. So let's go now in the living room. In the living room is where you learn all the advice of life. Right? In the living room is where you speak with your dad and he teach you son, I made this mistake in the past when I was doing this. Don't make that same mistake, because if I had to do it again, this is the way I will proceed, or anything like that. Bear with me. So then the son start taking note, right? Like me, for example, my father used to speak to me in what we call parabole in French, meaning parabola, and it's now that he's no longer here that sometimes I think about it and I'm like, what did he mean by this? And then I go and look at it, I'm like, oh, now I understand. Why? Because he left me those valuable lessons, right? So if I wasn't there with him in the living room, I probably wouldn't have learned that, because if you're too attached to your mom, usually what happens after we eat, right? We tend to go nap, sleep, or do other things. You don't really spend the time to be with your father, because usually when in African tradition, you will realize that most of the time when women are cooking, men are not there. Right? Men stay separately. So either with friends or they try to be with their son to teach them something. Those are the like intimate time that you spend with your father and try to learn something. Maybe I don't know, if you have girls problem, if you have anything other problem that is bothering you in life and you want to explain it, you want to tell it to him so he can maybe provide with you advice. Like, I knew that men are really, really, really important in the life of a young boy. You know, what I mean by that is like what fathers are really important in the life of a young boy. I knew it when I got in the US. I got here very, very young, right? So when I got here, and I knew for a fact that every single thing I say, my mom will cry, because I went through some rough time, and I'm not trying to say here for anybody to feel bad for me, but I went through some rough time, and every single time when I will talk about it with my dad, like I will call him and talk about it with him on the phone. He will always tell me, "Hey, we won't let your mother know about this part. We will choose this one to tell her, because you know how she keep her heart in her hand. It's too easy to play with it. She's very emotional. So this is how we will proceed. You know, you gotta hang in there. This is what you should do." This is like, he will give me advice on how we'll proceed, and we won't tell my mom. My mom will find out maybe years later that what I went through after it had already passed, and now I'm like on a different phase of life, right? So every time she's like, "How come you guys didn't tell me?" We will be like, "Hey, we knew you couldn't handle it." And you know, even then she will cry, but it will be different, right? She will be a little bit more emotional. She used to say that we're keeping secret from, because we knew how fragile her heart is. So if you are not with your father in the living room, if you are not learning that every truth is not good to tell, right? If you're not learning that just because it happened doesn't mean that you have to come and pour it out on your mother, because at the end of the day, mothers want what is best for their kids. They want to be aware of everything, which I learned not to say everything. I learned to pick and choose what to say. I know my second mom might not like it, you know. She knows where she is, you know. She might not like it, but I'm just saying the way I grew up, the way my father taught me. So it kind of stuck with me that, hey, you know, there are certain things you don't say just because you know it affect people in a negative way and it might ruin their day or something. Let them be happy and you go ahead and you handle the struggle. You are a man, you know. That's why you will most of the time hear us men say that when people will be struggling, like very struggling with how do you call it? They will be struggling where they get depressed and they will say, "I cannot get depressed. I'm African." That is because that is the way we were taught. We were taught that we don't get depressed. We were taught that we are tough. We were taught that, you know, you have to be strong. You have to show no emotion, because if you start showing emotion on your family, then what about the rest of your family, mostly kid and women? You know, how are they going to handle it if you yourself as a man cannot handle it? So there are times where sometimes you see danger, you just got to walk toward it, man, because, hey, sometimes one person got to take one for the team. So that is my point, is you learn most of those things by spending time in the living room with your father. Now, it's different from girls, right? One thing that we realize in Africa is girls like to when a girl is looking for a man, a husband, boyfriend, she usually look at the physique of her father. She want a man that is like her father, right? But she mostly grew up in the kitchen because she's learning how to be a woman, how to be submissive to her husband, how to be respectful to others. Like, in Africa, they don't believe that that a man, like that my friend, like as a man, that your friend should be friends with your wife. Like your friends that are guys should be friends with your wife. They don't believe in that. Like I remember this man saying that one day he saw the boss of his wife giving a ride to his wife back home. And when she got out of the car and she was like, oh, this is my husband, blah, blah, blah. The man looked at the boss and told him that next time I will be the one giving a ride to your wife also. And the boss understood what he meant, right? Because you do not do that. You do not give a ride to somebody else's wife. And women have to be learning those type of things in the kitchen with their mother, that men, like, this is why you have to behave this certain way, because even if you didn't do nothing, you don't know what your actions can say, or people might interpret your actions not the way you intended them to be interpreted, So you have to be very careful on how you portray yourself. So women usually learn that in the kitchen. They learn the nurturing side. They learn how to give birth. They learn lots of stuff. They learn like this. Like for example, most of us Africans, we eat food that are food, but they are also medicinal. Like they would tell them like, hey, whenever your husband is maybe struggling with like stomach ache, like this is the type of food that you should cook for him, so that when he eat it, like it will also be like a healer, like something that is going to heal him or make him feel better. So you have to learn all that in the kitchen as a woman. And so when they ask a woman, where did you grow up? If she grew up in the living room, it's not a good thing, because what is she really going to learn from her father, right? She has to learn most of everything to her mother. That's why they said, to understand how a girl will behave, you need to look at her mother. That is what allow you to understand how a girl will behave. Same thing, to understand how a guy behaves, you have to look at his father. What did his father teach him? Those are the things in life that you have to be aware of. So that being said, this podcast episode is pretty much coming to an end. But if you know me better than that, you know that we do not leave a podcast episode without telling you the quote of the day. So, ladies and gentlemen, here comes the quote of the day.
Yo, boss, where is the commercial?
We ain't got none. We got to work harder. All right. Now that we established that we still don't have a commercial, let's go ahead and read the quote of the day. So, the quote of the day today is very simple, and it comes from Ethiopia, right? So, the quote goes as this. If you pick up one end of the stick, you also pick up the other. If you pick up one end of the stick, you also pick up the other. Well, for those of you who are wondering what that means is, you should just go home and try to pick up one stick and see if the other one comes up as well. Yeah, man, that is funny. But anyway, hopefully you get it, right? So that being said, I really appreciate your time. Please feel free to contact me on my Instagram, bsteph77, also on LinkedIn at Stefan Nembert, and on Twitter, same thing at Stefan Nembert. And yeah, man, I really appreciate your time. To all my followers, please feel free to share my podcast with friends and family, teach that so they can maybe, learn something about culture and everything like that. And also I do motivational speaking. So please feel free to also check my LinkedIn. That's where I post most of my video about motivation, and also on Instagram, on IGTV. Yeah. But besides that, I thank you for your time, and as always, God bless. Peace.